Sure.
So you think that Christianity spread because there were people who had seen the risen Jesus, they were transformed and spread the gospel, and Christianity grew. Then, well, some would say Christianity only grew because Christians were violent. That's how they're violent. Yeah. What do you think about that?
Well, so it turns out, if you know your history at all, that Christianity grew in an explosive way because somehow history had been aligned in preparation for Jesus. In other words, Jesus was not born in the Egyptian Empire or the Persian Empire or the Greek Empire. He arrives in the 1st century in the Roman Empire, an empire that had paved the way with technology, an empire that had provided 200 years of peace. From about the 30s in the BCs to about 180 in the 80s, 200 years of peace in which, in other words, world peace. They had conquered the known world at the time. They also had developed a technology and built roads that would take everyone who wanted to talk about Jesus all over the empire, and had even had a mail system in place that would actually help to communicate ideas. And between that peace, and they had a common language, the Etruscan alphabet they had taken, and the Greek language, and they had disseminated it across the empire. So now we had a much more stable common language and alphabet, a travel system, a postal service, and 200 years of peace in a culture that at least started off being relatively tolerant in the first 30 years, but then flipped on a dime under Nero, and the persecution of Christians began. What's interesting is the most explosive historic growth of Christianity does not occur in places where Christians are victors, where they are heavy-handed, where they are the ruling class. It occurs in places where they are the victims. So it occurs in Rome under several emperors in the first 300 years, who off and on decided they wanted to persecute Christians for one reason or another. Not everyone, but some. It occurs explosively in places like China, where it's being oppressed. It's under oppression that Christianity has historically grown, not like here in America, where 60% probably still would say they're Christians. Really, you get a passive form of cultural Christianity in those settings. Even though we might have the power or the social influence to convince people or to keep them in the system, you get apathy. And it's in places where people are saying you can't be a Christian, where Christianity thrives and studies and worships in spirit and truth in a way that it doesn't happen in those cultures where it's dominant. So I think just the opposite is true in terms of the history of Christian growth, especially in terms of maturity.